At a distance, you wonder what they are, these abstract sculptures that litter the African landscape. But at close quarters, there's nothing abstract about them and no mystery. These are the remains of African elephants, the largest mammals that still wander the earth. And the way things are going, their wanderings will have ceased long before these sun-bleached bones become dust. Their destruction is part of a wider crisis. It's the collapse of nations that has made this a place of skulls. Throughout Africa, the destruction of wildlife is closely related to human misfortune. It comes in the wake of drought and famine, but more acutely as a consequence of civil war. All living things suffer terribly from the tribal fighting and the power struggles that are the curse of Africa. Nowhere is that reality more starkly displayed than here in Mozambique, where a particularly brutal civil war is raging. 15 years ago, a guerrilla group calling itself the Mozambique National Resistance, the MNR, took up arms against the new government of the late Samora Machel. The MNR appears to have no discernible policy and no known ideology. It lives parasitically off the land, killing indiscriminately. Those who escape with their lives often encounter other horrors. A US State Department report recently revealed that slave labor, forced prostitution, starvation, rape and torture are the way of life in areas held by the MNR. What has given the MNR bandits their strength and confidence has been the support of South Africa. This fact, plus the mounting devastation in Mozambique, finally brought neighboring Zimbabwe into the war against a common enemy. In 1985, the Zimbabwe army struck across the border into Mozambique's Gorongosa National Park, where, significantly, the MNR had set up its main base. Vast quantities of arms and ammunition were captured, material that had clearly been paid for with poached ivory. For this grim and squalid stockpile, Gorongosa's great elephant herds were sacrificed. The Zimbabwean paratroopers, led by Colonel Lionel Dyke, received the grateful thanks of the late Mozambique President Samora Machel. 1.5 tons of ivory was confiscated. It had taken Colonel Dyke and his task force of only 50 men just 30 minutes to overwhelm 300 MNR. Despite Zimbabwe's military intervention against the MNR, tens of thousands of Mozambique refugees continue to flood across the borders into Zimbabwe, fleeing the MNR terror. By now, all MNR political pretensions have vanished. Ivory is what they're after. As its price has soared from $25 to $80 a pound, they've sought it relentlessly, whatever the human cost. Hard on the heels of the refugees across the border into Zimbabwe came the MNR. Here at the Golden Cliffs of Chilojo, the MNR bandits have set their sights on a unique wilderness sanctuary, Gonorejo, the chalice of the elephants. This is not a game park in the traditional sense, but a protected wilderness, 2,000 square miles where elephants were once studied in an entirely natural habitat, and where they flourished to such an extent their numbers had to be controlled by culling. Those days have gone. For elephants, the Gonorrhoea is now a perilous and lonely place. It has become a battlefield, for here Zimbabwe is determined to make a stand, not just in defense of its national sovereignty, but to save its elephants. Why fight a war for elephants? The ecological answer is simple. If you lose the elephants, what reason is there to preserve these great wildlife sanctuaries at all? Without the elephants, sooner or later, Africa will lose its unique wildlife heritage. The victims of war are everywhere to be seen. This crippled bull has a bullet lodged in its knee. The herds have been fragmented and disorientated by their attackers. They're lost and dispirited, almost as if they've accepted their fate. While most animals fall victim to bullets, some are caught in steel wire snares, like this cow who's lost half her trunk. The Zimbabwe government has declared the Gonorrhoea a military zone. We are the first to be permitted to film here and to accompany a most unusual task force. African soldiers who've taken up arms against their fellow man for the sake of an animal.
Zero Green One.
Zero, send over.
We are now entering camp. Permission to end over.
Zero, you can now enter your visual. Keep coming over.
The 1st Parachute Regiment has been coming into the Gonorrheau for 2 years. Normally, they operate in patrol groups of 4. On this mission, there are 8 to look after us. Zimbabwe is committing its elite forces to the front line of the Gonorrheau, and the commitment requires a permanent base camp.
Afternoon.
How was the jump?
Everyone jumped well.
In reality, the Gonorrheau is almost indefensible. It shares 120 kilometers of wilderness border with Mozambique. We're not the only ones facing this operation a little nervously. Trooper Darlington Chiwara is 19. He qualified for 1 para because he was top marksman in his class at military school. This is his first mission.
Hold it. 4, 5. 1 for the bus.
Zimbabwe's 1 para has links with other special forces around the world. Training standards are extremely high, and the men have a passion for physical fitness. It's also well equipped with modern weapons. The unit has its own medic, Corporal Clement Mushadaya. Trooper Al Chipenguru, just turned 21, is a veteran of Zimbabwe's raid on the MNR base in Mozambique. The patrol is deployed after intelligence sources report the presence of a group of MNR scouts crossing into the Gonorrheau. These scouting parties locate the elephant herds before calling in a killing squad armed with Soviet Kalashnikov automatics, AK-47s.
Here. We'll move down through that gully, heading over this direction there. 270 degrees.
Our patrol has orders to find and then to kill the MNR scouts. But for all we know, the enemy may already have been reinforced. These young Zimbabwe soldiers know that in the past, the enemy has numbered as many as 75 bandits, armed with heavy weapons and quite prepared to fight off any opposition.
Hi, it's beautiful. This is the closest I've come to touch an elephant. It's fantastic. It's very beautiful.
A reminder of a time when Africa was Eden and man's hunting made little impact on the teeming wildlife. Now that balance has been changed by high-powered weapons of war. Evidence of intruders. The Gonorejao is now a closed military zone. Only bandits build campfires here.
It has got a snare on, and I think it broke away, and some jackals came to have their share. And I think it ran about 20 yards and it dropped here.
Near this spot in September 1988, 2 game rangers were ambushed by the MNR and incinerated in their vehicle. Since then, Game Department staff have been withdrawn. The work of the Game Department, particularly keeping records on poaching, has been taken on by the military.
Color, not the lock states on the map.
In the heart of the Gonorejao, the evidence of destruction is everywhere. Scavengers can reduce a carcass to bones in days. This is what remains of a black rhino. A third of the black rhino in the Gonorejao have been lost to the MNR in little more than a year. The MNR bandits, drawn into the Gonorejao reserve by the promise of rich ivory spoils, don't only hunt animals. They also destroy villages on the edge of the park to intimidate the population and to steal food. Practically every community around here has come under attack, leaving the economy in ruins and families destitute. Since the MNR's first incursion in 1986, more than 50 children have been murdered.
We had just completed our evening meal. when the bandits arrived and demanded what was left of our food, which they took. They then proceeded into our huts and took all the maize meal that we had. They collected all our possessions that were packed in bags, which they tore open and ransacked, leaving them lying around. They threw this child on the fire. This is where she was burnt. Another child was left for dead, having been beaten on the head. He was then thrown onto the cooking fire. His shirt caught fire and he was burnt around the shoulders. He was burnt here, here, and here. The problem this child has is as a result of this bandit attack. She was beaten almost to death with a pickaxe handle. Now she can't walk properly. I pleaded with them not to harm the children. They were only children and did not know anything. What they then did was bind this woman's husband's hands. He realized he was going to be killed, so he asked if he could relieve himself as a plan to escape. They said yes, but escorted him to the edge of the village, where they hit him on the back of the head. Because his hands were tied like this behind his back, he fell forward with his face in the earth, where he died. Having killed him, they went back and beat this woman. She tried to run away when they took a huge stick and beat her again and again. She was running, and they tried to hit her, but missed her head and hit her child that was strapped on her back. She got away, but her husband died where he lay. They then burnt our village to the ground.
The battle to save elephants is now political. For Zimbabwe, the struggle to save its wildlife is part of its struggle to defend itself as a nation. And the problem is not restricted to Zimbabwe. While we were in the Gonorrhoeau, Kenya reported its herd of elephants to have fallen below 20,000, a drop of over 1,000%, blaming much of this on Somali raiding parties from outside its borders. In January 1989, Kenya followed Zimbabwe's lead and issued a shoot-to-kill policy against poachers. Our patrol realizes with relief that these elephants are not being panicked by bandits, but the animals' engaging display disguises a tragedy. These are all orphans. And since there are so few adult survivors to teach them how to behave, their conduct is delinquent. In normal circumstances, elephants lead orderly family lives. These apparently playful youngsters are in fact desperately at risk. It won't be long before these little tusks attract the poacher's attention.